What's up, everybody? I'm David Hain. Welcome to episode number 299 of the A2D From Addict to Disciple podcast. If you enjoy this podcast, please like, subscribe, follow, and share the link with your friends. If you'd like to get our curriculum, you can get the paperback read book of From Ashes to Destiny on Amazon. Today's episode number 299 is entitled Anger. And in this episode, we're going to talk about dealing with anger and how to see how this fits in our recovery and addiction and in our relationships. So let's start with the definition of anger. From the Oxford Languages Dictionary, it says, anger is a strong feeling of annoyance, displeasure, or hostility. The example they give is, she could barely restrain her anger at this comment. So you're getting a feel for where we're going with anger. Well, the American Psychology Association says anger can make you feel as though you're at the mercy of an unpredictable and powerful emotion. Therefore, learn how to control it. So anger is this strong feeling which is annoying and it's unpleasant and it sort of makes us hostile, but at the same time we're feeling like we're at the mercy of something that's going on inside of us, like the emotion is greater than us and we can't control our actions. And this leads a lot of people to go to anger management courses and anger management therapy and anger management classes to try to get their behavior under control. So how do we really look at digging deeper to understand our anger, to process it, and begin to control it? And right up front, I want to say, if this is you, a good thing to do would be to Google anger icebergs or anger iceberg worksheets, and you'll find quite a few there to give you some stuff to work with to dig into your anger and dig deeper. One that I particularly like is by Therapist Aid LLC. And in their iceberg, they sort of look at 4 categories above the water level to get you to dig deep, lower under the surface. So I'm going to look at their 4 headings to get us going here. The first one is looking at how anger was viewed in your home, your family, and your culture. And I want to ask you, was this fully acceptable that your family was one of those that just said venting it is better than stuffing it and verbal is better than physical? So let off your steam. Physical's not acceptable, but vocal anger is. Maybe you were the other way, where not even vocal anger was acceptable and you had to stuff it. So I think it's important beginning to really look at culture did you grow up in? What family norms did you grow up in that have affected the way you deal with anger today? And I think it's important to realize that we all get angry, and a lot of us blooming hot crazy when someone does something that upsets us. Either they think they're the expert and they don't even know us. A lot of guys that I talk to in recovery say part of their anger is when someone they view as incompetent or uncaring or not listening to them as an individual tries to impose an action plan on them to follow in their recovery. You got it? So there's a lot of things that can come into play in how we react based on the way we were raised. A second area to look at is what triggers your anger. What are the people, places, and things that can trigger your anger? Is it momentary situations that just pop up? Perhaps it's a chronic lifestyle, daily grind of something that just irritates you under the surface every day, day in and day out, hour in and hour, minute by minute. And so you're almost always ready to boil over because you've got this ongoing stress and this stuff is just always just below the surface. Well, Elizabeth Kenny, an Australian bush nurse in the early 1900s, said a great quote. She said, "He who angers you conquers you." So I want to urge you, when you look at the people, places, and things that trigger you, realize that these are people, places, and things that because they anger you, they can conquer you. And hopefully, as we go through this podcast episode, you'll realize we don't want to give them that power over us. The next area to look at is what thoughts and emotions fuel your anger. Could it be your self-image, low self-esteem, feeling you're not heard, not valued, not respected? Whatever it might be, those negative things that are in our thoughts that fuel woe is me sort of emotions. And they become all we think about. And the ancient Chinese philosopher Confucius reminds us with a great quote, when anger rises, think of the consequences. And what I'm saying here is when our thoughts and emotions are so tied up in this stuff that we're not being heard, not valued, not respected, and stuff like that, we don't even think of the consequences because those thoughts are controlling us. The anger that's growing inside of us is controlling us, and it's going to control our behavior. So an important sort of interruption we could do would be to start thinking of the consequences if we allow the anger to boil over in us. And a fourth area that they talk about in the iceberg model that I'm going through is that anger is easily seen and heard behavior. People see our behavior. It's what they're reacting to, and that's why they send us the anger management classes. But I want to say that anger is often just anger. So don't just change your behavior. The behavior is just the tip of the iceberg. And the anger is all the stuff underneath. So we need to do an iceberg analysis. And I want to give a quote for this part of saying that anger is easily seen and heard behavior. And it's a quote by Ambrose Bierce, an American journalist and short story writer in the 1800s, who said, "Speak when you are angry, and you will make the best speech you will ever regret." Shuh. You got that? When we speak too quickly, when we're angry, it sounds like the best speech we've ever made, but it becomes the best speech you'll ever regret. Because we regret the things we say in anger as they don't express the true us, they just express us as the boiling over us. So how do we control anger before it controls us? How do we control anger before we boil over without just saying it's behavior modification? It's digging deep in this iceberg, and what are we looking for? Well, there are some things we can do while we're digging down and the anger pops up. First thing we can do is consciously and intentionally do things to get calm. Count to 10. Do slow breaths, breathing in and breathing out. The breathing exercise things. Because as Seneca, the ancient Roman philosopher, once said, the greatest remedy for anger is delay. I think one of the keys right up front is to say, how do you pause, take a deep breath, and delay reacting in anger? How do you get calm? And not just settle for getting calm. A second thing I'd like to say is, how do you get to peace? Well, if you don't know what brings you peace, how are you ever going to get there? So I want to get you started here. What's your happy spot? What makes you smile? What makes you laugh? What makes you feel like the world's okay? That's where you need to get to. Because as Horace, the Roman poet in the time of Augustus, said, anger is momentary madness. So control your passion or it will control you. So we have to get out of that passion, emotion that can turn so easily into outrage and rage, and turn it to peace so that it doesn't control us. And I'd like to say a next step would be to get connected, to talk with someone. Don't just try to do this all on your own. Let someone know you're battling anger and why you are, so you can get a different perspective. Ali ibn Abu Talib, the first Shia imam in the 600s, said, "A moment of patience in a moment of anger saves 1,000 moments of regret." So I want to urge you, as you think about who you could talk to, who you would get connected with, it should be someone who's not going to jump right on your side and get you stirred up even further, like, yeah, go after him, go after him. It's someone who's going to give you patience and calm. Okay. The fourth and final step I'd like to talk about is not just getting connected, but getting engaged. So, what activity can you do to let your anger dissipate? Sort of like letting the steam off on the steam pot or the steam kettle. Because often, if we don't get engaged in something positive, we may have dealt with it for a moment. We got the water sort of just below the boiling point, but it's still ready to boil over. And I have hundreds and hundreds of guys who've told me over the years, I got so angry that I turned my back on my family. I turned my back on recovery. I turned my back on this, that, and the other thing. And please, I want to encourage you, don't be one of those guys who regrets what you turned your back on. So in closing, I want to encourage all of you to draw an iceberg as you're finishing listening to this, and put anger at the top above the surface and what it looks like in you, and then do the work for what's underneath the water surface in that iceberg. Thanks for listening to this episode of the A to D from Addict to Disciple podcast. If you'd like to contact me, you can message me on the link in this podcast or by email at david@a2d@gmail.com, or go to my website, www.fromatod.org, and click on the contact page. Keep listening to future podcast episodes, and as always, stay safe and stay resilient.